Pete, Mindwiseman's channel, aka Maverick Outdoors, and it's a Friday evening coming up to 9 o'clock, and I've paddled for about a mile from Putting, and I'm onto a trail on the river, and I'm on my way to one of a few pitches on a riverbank along the Thames, and I've got about another mile to go, so it's about a 2 mile paddle in the dark, so I'm taking it steady. The water's nice and still. It's a clear starry night. You can see all the constellations. And as I go downstream, to my left is the plough and to my right is Cassiopeia. So I'm going to be paddling right through the middle of them as they shine and twinkle up above. Probably catch you where I'm going to pitch up on the riverbank. So I've landed in the dark, and now I've got to set up the basher and then make something to eat. It's a really mild evening, so it's quite a pleasure to actually set up the basher in the dark, and there's not going to be any foreboding weather. So it's 10:30 at night, and I've set up my basher, a little bit more lower profile than what I normally do with this 3x3 metre tarp. But organise everything, always important, in my book anyway, to have a nice tidy setup, all organised, everything you know where it is, all nice and tidy, other bits and pieces. Tools all set out, chair ready, and then I'm going to have something quick and easy, which is going to be some salmon jerky there in the packet, and also some stuffed aubergines and some herring in red and green pepper sauce. It's quite tangy. I've had that before, I really like it. So I'm going to eat that cold, get that down my neck, and then it's not that cold, but I'll probably get the Firebox going, purely just to have a little bit of entertainment, a little bit of viewing for the evening, a little bit of flame from the Firebox, and also get a brew on. And just nice to sit down now. I'm ready to have the herring fillets and the stuffed aubergines in a tomato sauce of rice and vegetables they're stuffed with. And that salmon jerky was a nice little starter. Okay, so let's get the day on the go. Freshen up with some wet wipes, partial derobe, do my hands, face, neck, and my nether regions. So get my daytime footprint ready, partial deflate of the mats. So they're easier to fold and either use as a sit space or kneeling pad. So if you need to get down on the floor to get access to any bits of kit, or just manoeuvring around under the tarp when actually not sitting down on the chair, then that gives it more practicality and use to actually use the mats. Plus it gives me access to safely walk without damaging the mats either end through either end of the basher tarp shelter, and also be able to utilise the mats if I need to. But now it's freshen up time. Right, that feels a bit better, and anything that didn't breeze dry a quick dry off with multi-purpose paper kitchen roll. Job done. I'm here for 2 nights, so I'm going to air my sleeping bag. Albeit there's a bit of air circulation because I don't actually get in the bag, I drape it over me. And then just airing my hat inside out, where I've just pulled it through the loop of the tarp where it's taut from the paracord. So, that'll freshen up, ready for tonight's sleep. And reposition the solar panel so it's in more direct sunlight. Charging the phone, so I've always got that backup if need be, any emergencies, but only use the phone when I'm out and about on my wild camping, maybe just to upload some pictures in real time on social media. So, using the solar panel. Right, so I'm going to get brunchy breakfast on the go in the brew box, not to flavour or tangify my brews, tea or coffee, but I've got a homegrown chilli, so I'm going to be placing that with one of the meals. One thing I will reiterate, as I've done before, but this is a slightly different example, in my food box I've got some MREs, as you can see, potatoes, bits and bobs of food, but some stuff I took out of the freezer right at the last moment was, which is still nice and cold, is a shop bought just for convenience, and then what I did, I froze it in its actual plastic container, then separated them and then put it in a vacuum seal bag, which I'll then boil in the water, and then insulated between another MRE, you can see where my fingertip is pointing, and then inside of that is some shop bought beef kebabs, chili, again just for convenience. I bought some mince but I didn't have time to make my own ones, so that's sort of insulated, so that's sort of staying sort of not quite fridge but old-fashioned larder cool. And as I place these MREs back, they feel nice and cold as well, and I've kept this box in the shade as at all times, and it will stop the food from perishing, especially over maybe a 2 maximum 3 day period once that meat's defrosted. But I've done it many times before, but I thought I'd just double show you on this weekend's outing. With literally a version of how I did it this time, which is slightly different depending obviously on the food and what you're actually bringing with you, what can actually insulate some of the last moment food that you pack before you leave that's come out the freezer. So as you can see there, I'll wedge a stick on the hinge of the bay alarm handle. These billy cans come with sort of like plastic inserts that help wedge it in place, but of course they're going to burn or melt with the flames over a period of time. Thank you, ducks, interrupting. So I just wedge a stick. I didn't get the idea from anywhere, I just thought, well, how can I do that? So I thought, it's not going to burn, and if it does I can replace it with another one. But it keeps the bay alarm in position so it doesn't get hot. And you can see there the tin breakfast warming up in the boiling, simmering river water. So the obvious point being, the bay alarm handle stays cold. I mean, that's really cold, as if it's not even on top of the firebox, and you can easily pick it up if you haven't got a fire glove or a protective glove, especially if the bay alarm drops down and of course gets hot, and it's just inconvenient. So if you get the right bit of stick and wedge it in there, you can see that's not really going to be going anywhere. Job done. And a typical example there, I've lifted up the billy off of the firebox so I can just give it a stir in the can of breakfast, and then I'll put the lid back on, and it will still heat through, but I need to get that back going again because kettle on the brew. But you can see I've sort of positioned myself so easy access to the wood. My rubbish bag, that was an old postal bag, turned it inside out so it's not bright white, although it is reflective black, and I've got easy access to everything that I need, and I'm using my food box as a work surface to put things on. butter's a good indication as to how cool your food box is, especially if you haven't got ice blocks and that sort of thing, and it's just basically a box and you insulate it, as I explained earlier. That butter feels as if it's near enough just come out of the fridge, so I know everything in the box is keeping its coolness and not to perish. So thumbs up to that. Okay, so in between a few private low-flying aircraft that are going over, because it's quite a nice mild day and it's quite appropriate for the private aircraft owners to sort of go out and have a bit of a jolly, and maybe the odd honking goose which is in the distance. I'm just going to talk briefly about filtering water. Those that follow my channels will know that I've used a Millbank bag, and what you do is with this, it's sort of a cotton canvas, you soak it in the water, whatever your water source, and then you just hang it up and it drains and drips into whatever vessel you're going to collect the water in to then boil it up. Now, it doesn't get rid of all the nasties. All it does, it gets rid of the sediment and all the gunk that might actually be sort of levitating or floating or within the water that you're actually getting the source of the water from. So, I've featured this before and have used the Millbank bag, and I explained on the previous video to this one that when I boiled up some water in the billy can to then heat up the boil in the bag ready to eat meals, you could see the sediment at the base of the billy can, and you know, that does get, it's not going to be harmful, it's not going to kill you, but it does actually flavour the water, because obviously it's coming from the river, and you're going to get sort of, it's got a slight sort of metallic taste, not to say there's any metals in the water, but it's got that sort of slight off taste. To say it's drinkable, it's consumable, brilliant in a survival situation using these sort of two items. And I always carry this in my kit bag just in case anything ever happens whereby I don't need anything to use to filter the water that actually could fail, which actually now brings me on to the next point. This weekend I brought with me my Aquamira Pro filter, which gets rid of 99.9% of all the gunk and what have you, but it doesn't get rid of viruses and certain bacteria, but it does get the worst of it out. And also an empty plastic bottle which originally had some soda in it, whereby the screw thread will actually fit onto the Aquamira Pro device. So initially I'm going to source the water from the river and then pour it through this filter. It was only £1 from the pound shop, and I always keep this in the boot of my car. I've never actually used it, so I thought, well, it's not contaminated with any fuel, oil, petrol or anything like that, so it'll be a first use, and then I'm going to actually use it to then pour the water into the top of the bottle and then fill this up as the water source container. There's lots of different water filter devices you can use, but this just being one example of a sort of middle of the range version, whereby I'm going to show you how I'm actually going to process it, source some water and then make it consumable and used for my cooking and drinking. So I've just sourced the river water, funnels in the bottle. I'm just using the funnel easy just to fill up the bottle. I could have got maybe a piece of plastic and made a cone out of it, or some paper, but I might as well use this funnel as I had it in the boot. This holds about 2 litres and this is about a litre bottle, so I've just put nearly a litre in there. That's tightly secure. The plastic straw tube that comes with the filter unit can actually fit, instead of where the bottle's screwed on underneath, there is a protrusion within that little grey area where this straw fixes onto. The straw can go into the water source, and then you take off the non-contamination cap and there is a bite mouthpiece that you'd actually suck the fluid through from the straw through the filtering unit to then consume it. So I'm taking the bite mouthpiece off, and there you can see is the opening where when I turn this upside down it's going to filter through then what I'm going to do is turn the bottle upside down and squeeze filter it into my water to go bottle, which gets rid of, again, 99.9% recurring of all nasties, and also this one, the filter system, gets rid of metals, chemicals, chlorine, fluoride, all that sort of thing, so you can actually use this domestically. So then when I do drink out of this, it's going to have a really sort of spring fountain flavour and texture to it. The water needs to just gravitationally prime into the filter system that little bit more, and then the water will flow out of it much easier. In principle, the water to go bottle can just scoop up water straight from the river and then put the filter device cap on, screw it up, and then levered straw and drink straight out of it. But the convenience of actually filtering it from the Aquamira is that it's already filtered, and even if I don't want to drink out of this, and just for convenience or moving around on the go, I can pour some of that water which has been preliminary filtered with the Aquamira Pro, albeit not as effective as this one, but it's got rid of most of the gremlins, whereby then when I do boil it up, either for cooking in a billy can, saucepan, that sort of thing, or making a brew, pouring that filtered water out is much better than maybe millbank bagging the water or filtering it through a fibrous device, you know, something, even a survival situation, a sock, a bandana, that sort of thing, to get the worst bits of the sediment out of it. That's what a millbank bank does. So then I've got two aspects of the water in that bottle: drink out of it, or it's been partially filtered, albeit not as good as maybe through that filter, which gets rid of all the chemicals, metals, all that sort of thing, but at least it makes it more consumable and also more palatable, as I said, pouring then that out to use for cooking or making a cup of tea, coffee, that sort of thing. So the bottle's full. It takes 3/4 of a litre, so I can either screw that on, keep the cap on, and then use the straw it levers up and drink straight out of it. Obviously never contaminate anything, any of the mouthpieces, straws, bite devices and that, with your fingers, hence that's why there's a little lever there to bring it up, so you're never really touching anything that can get contaminated, because obviously it defeats the object of putting it through the filter in the first place. So I can also take the cap off, and that's partially filtered, so it's in pretty good condition to make a brew, which I think I'm going to do now. I'm not going to go into the technicalities of how these different filter systems work and the principles behind them. There's lots of information out there, but I'm just showing you an example of using my two bits of kit and a variety of ways of how you can use them. So on that note, cheers. But even if you're not going to use the phone, it's always good, you know, sort of preparedness, survivalist, whatever attitude you want to call it. I'm always trying to be one step ahead, so, you know, there could be a journey home whereby something could happen where I get scuppered and then I'm left not being able to get home, and then maybe the phone isn't fully charged, or I might need it whereby 20% wasn't really appropriate. So I'm always trying to keep it topped up, and it doesn't take any effort to leave it out with the solar panel, or any other unit for that matter that you need to charge up. So it's coming up to mid-afternoon. I've got my chillax hammock with me, but I haven't put it up yet. But I'm having just as good a relaxing time reclined in my chair and with my feet up on my food box, nearly a horizontal. It's nearly as good as a sun lounger camp bed. Relaxing to the sound of the breeze in the trees, honking Canadian geese and the odd little chugging leisure boat going by, as you can now hear in the distance. Okay, so I'm ready to make my late afternoon, early evening meal. It's coming up to around about nearly 4:45. So I'm going to cut the potatoes up on the inside of the lid that stayed clean. Yeah, I had my feet resting, my heels resting on the outside of the lid on the box. But guess what, the potatoes are going to be boiled up in the water anyway. So there's no contamination here. So I'm going to cut the potatoes up and put them in the billy and then get the firebox on the go. At the big outdoorsy enthusiast meet, which is generally known as the Prepper meet, which was the end of June this year. It was a meet-up of you know, YouTube channels, people that follow my channel, other people's channels, each other's channels, and also they're generally interested in sort of like bushcraft, wild camping, preparedness and survival, of course, with bug out vehicles and all that sort of thing. I've met the guy a few times, but we had a really good chat over that weekend and really got to know each other. A guy called Dave Wakeling of Outlaw Bushcraft, and he makes a load of bushcraft items, some sort of fire steels, walking sticks, all that sort of thing, shooting sticks, all handmade, handcrafted. And he gave me as a gift one of his fire steels, an antler handled fire steel. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to christen it in the outdoors and fire that up. My Vaseline impregnated cotton, circular cotton wipes from my fire lighting kit. So here we go to christen this to get the firebox going. So the size that I've cut the potatoes under that heat and flamage will cook in about sort of, I'd say 12-15 minutes. Then I'm going to have half of those with the beef kebabs. Then I'm going to let the rest of them cool down and then fry them up with some butter with my breakfast tomorrow. So 2 jobs in 1. Wild camp multitasker. What I love about times like this is when I'm out wild camping in the canoe and all that sort of thing. Alright, yeah, there might be the odd private plane flying over and it might be a flight path depending on the weather of commercial aircraft. But you know, sitting down, chilling in the chair, watching the firebox, cook my food, and then the sounds that you can only actually hear if you're actually out on the waters. The sounds of the wildlife, like Canadian geese, herons, which have got a particular and specific sort of, I don't know, squeaky crawl that they make, but it's normally in flight as they actually take off or before they land. Kingfishers, which have a real high pitch, and then you've got robins, which I had one sort of pottering around, hopping around here earlier on this morning, and they have a distinctive sort of tweet as well. So that's what I like. Alright, so there's an aircraft in the distance, it's just being outdoors in the fresh air. You know, you're just in total harmony with making something to eat, being in the great outdoors, natural element, cooking your food. And that's what I really like about it. It's just everything blends together. Yeah, it's great in the woods as well, terra firma, but it's for me it's mainly out on the rivers and travelling around in my canoe. So I've done a fork test on the potatoes. They're nearly done. They've been actually under 15 minutes, just over 10. I reckon about 12.35 minutes. Green case that I bring my kettle in. Mentioned this in the distant past. This actually came with the kettle was in it, but also with my set of saucepans, which is this one. There's a small one that goes inside it with some cups that was given to me by a gift from an ex-girlfriend of mine. I still use these. I've had these, I suppose I've had this saucepan for now nearly 10 years I suppose, but I can actually fit that in there, as you will have seen in previous times. Then I can put the kettle upside down, put the lid on, and this can all go in here. So I thought, if I'm going to bring this with a kettle anyway, I might as well bring the saucepan, because this is what I'm going to heat up the pre-cooked long life sausage in tomorrow, and also reheat with butter the potatoes. But once I've actually cooked the potatoes for tonight to go with the kebabs, I'll actually eat them out of here with a bit of drizzled butter, or melted butter rather, and some pepper and salt to actually eat with the kebabs. And then the ones that are left over in the billy can, I will actually put in here to be cooled off, and then they'll be ready for tomorrow with the sausage. So I've drained off the water from the potatoes. I'm going to keep them in there so they stay warm. So I'll leave some of the potatoes in there for tomorrow. Then the ones I want to eat tonight will go in there with the melted butter. So whilst the potatoes are staying warm in the old billy, the kebabs are now on the little grill that comes with the firebox. But I've just placed it on top of the fire sticks, which are resting horizontally, which was supporting the billy and the kettle over this weekend. But I want to keep the flames down a bit so they don't sort of engulf around the kebabs, so they sort of cook near enough barbecue style, so it's the right type of fuel to go in to try and keep the flames. I mean, they will spark up now and then because obviously the fat's going to drip. So as best as possible, considering, you know, it's sort of freelance flames gulfing about in the firebox, I'll try and sort of regulate as best as possible, and so they don't burn through. Residual heat there now. As long as I hear them sizzling a little bit, then I know that heat's actually cooking them through. I'll put bits of wood on there now and then, but maybe just one bit. But normally that sort of grid grill plate, because it's stainless steel, once it absorbs the heat, okay, yeah, in the centre there's a bit more residual heat, but just move it around a bit and it does equally cook the meat, even the bits on the left and to the right compared to the middle. It still does cook through okay. Again, it's always just keeping an eye on it, knowing what you're trying to do, and then adjusting whatever cooking device. Anyway, I'm seasoning the potatoes, half of them in there with some butter, then I'll put the lid on and then they'll just warm through and melt the butter, and then the rest of them I'll leave in there to cool down, and then eventually decant them and put them back in here to store for tonight, ready to cook with the sausage tomorrow. So I've taken a nibble, one of the kebabs, nice and tangy, sweet, chilli hot, and the potatoes I eventually drizzled also with some tomato sauce. So that's my late afternoon stroke early evening meal. As simple as it is, buttered, salt and peppered, drizzled with tomato sauce, boiled new potatoes, and these kebabs. Cordon bleu, chefs, eat your heart out. Oh, quality, especially outdoors, in the fresh air, on a lovely, mild September weekend evening. Quality. So I've emptied the other half of the potatoes into the saucepan, close it up nice and safely, get the handles out of the way so they don't get damaged, and then that's ready for tomorrow's breakfast. So I've just got some more river water to process via the filtration system, so I've got enough water for the rest of the weekend. So I've filled up the black bottle after filtering it with the Frontier Pro, so I've got enough water to make a brew, and if I need any more I've got some still in the bottle that I can filter again. But now it's dessert time, just going to get some more river water to boil in the bag. Army ration, it's a chocolate pudding in chocolate sauce. So I've got one of those little fibrous, eco-friendly fire lighters, and I've scraped the top into sort of dust shavings with the tip of the open-all knife. So it's just gone 7 o'clock, and in about an hour's time it's going to get dark, so I just went and got some more firewood, and that's probably going to do me for the rest of the weekend, well over the next 24 hours at least, because that's how long or more I'm going to be here for. So it's always better to have a bit more fuel than you need than not enough, and then you can always put that aside and put it somewhere for next time. You'll notice some of the thinner sort of spindly stuff to get the fire going, which if you want to classify as kindling, which is those thinner bits, have come from little sprigs of dried vine, which tends to grow on lots of fallen trees, but especially white willow. And I'll show you the configuration of how it grows. So you can see how it sort of twines itself round and clambers round the main trunk. As you can see on this dead, fallen, a long time ago, white willow trunk, it's where it grows, and it just easily snaps off. And that's a good source of kindling when you know what you're looking for the type of wood on fallen dead wood. Even though when it's virtually dead and it's brittle and it's good for burning, it still has a bit of springiness and life in it, whereby you can sort of like use it, not literally as a besom broom, but if you're just as an example, I mean it's a very crude sort of example, but if I just want to sort of get stuff away from the shelter, or if you need to brush some leaves away, or even back on for leave no trace, and you want to put them back again, this stuff works pretty well. So I'm now ready for the chocolate dessert, which is nice and warm, but it's nice and warm but not too hot to hold, burn my hands as I'm holding. So it's coming up to about nearly 9 o'clock now on Saturday night, and just chilling to the nice bit of warmth and flickering light of the flames in the firebox. Just have that for a little bit of Saturday night entertainment to start with. Then it'll be ready to put the kettle on. So I'm just going to savour these lovely flickering flames and then make myself a cup of tea. Well, that didn't take long, just under 5 minutes to get that kettle boiling the water. Let's have a nice nighttime brew. Oh, that's good. I'll probably do a bit of reading, chill on the mat, on the footprint under the tarp, then probably doze off. Don't know, depends if I feel a bit hungry later on. A couple of hours I might have the beef in black bean sauce with rice. If not, I'll keep it cool and probably have it tomorrow afternoon. Okay, final little edification of the night. I've decided to have something to eat. I'm getting a bit peckish now. I ate nearly 5 hours ago, so I'm going to have this beef in black bean sauce and rice, which, as I mentioned yesterday, is actually in a vacuum seal bag where I froze it in the plastic tray that it comes in. So hopefully this bag should bear up under the strain of the boiling water on the firebox. So hopefully I can keep it just about the right heat so the actual plastic bag can actually maintain its seal and not burst or split during the heating process. Okay, so it's been gently bubbling for just over about 5 minutes, and the bag, I just had a look a bit earlier, it's definitely okay. A lot of it depends on the quality of these vacuum seal bags. I mean, these ones that I get are good quality, they're on a roll, I can cut them to size, then seal them with the heating strip that's on the vacuum sealer before then actually sealing the bag with whatever the contents are. But again, at the end of the day, I mean, I've heard stories, if you're using these bags, you know, from outdoors activity groups and people like that, that they've found that they might not have used enough water. So the base of the bag was quite near to the base of where the heating element's coming through, even if it's sort of on a domestic cooker, and probably damaged the bag. But as with anything heating and cooking, you know, it's just a gradual process. So what I'll do now is I'll take it off the heat and then just let it continue to heat while it just stays the bag of food inserted in the water. So I've taken the bag out now, as you can see, and I'm just rolling up the top and then just compressing, and there's no leakage in it or anything, so yeah, that's going to be fine. So just for convenience and to make it easier to eat from, I've got the billy can lid just wiped over with a kitchen towel, paper towel, and then I've sort of opened the top of the bag, laid it horizontal, and sort of made 4 cuts, sort of crisscross. As you can see where my spoon is, I can sort of eat it out the bag as if it's actually on a plate. So, bon appetit. So all in all, if you take it steady and you try and heat it up gradually so it does heat through properly, the bag should stay sealed, and then you won't get any ingress from any of the boiling water or this leaking into the boiling water. So then basically you've got soup. So it's just gone midnight. I'm going to put the kettle on for the final time as this night comes to a close, and I'm going to make myself an all-in-one coffee. It won't keep me awake. From experience, I know it won't. And in my pewter hip flask I've got some spiced rum, so I'll just put a little splash of that once I've got the brew in the mug, and do myself before bedtime a hot toddy. And on that note, I'll bid you good night. Okay, it's Sunday morning. While the weather's pretty mild, it's going to be quite a mild day forecast. Bit breezy, but while the weather's mild enough, just in my t-shirt, airing the clothes that I just slept in last night, and lucky enough I always practice putting my kit under the tarp before I settle for the night, just in case there's any adverse weather. There wasn't any forecast rain for last night, but guess what? About 1 o'clock in the morning it did start to pitter-patter. Very, very light shower. About 2 showers from about 1 o'clock to about 1:30. So before settling for the night I covered the firebox with the wind guard, which has been really handy considering the wind's been broadsiding from the riverbank to my pitch a little bit, so that's been effective for the fuel. And then putting all my kit underneath the tarp before I settle for the night. And of course the firewood was covered as well, which protected it. Footprints clear. Going to be clear a little bit more when I pack away the sleeping bag and the mats, because I won't need those because I'll be going home late this afternoon. So once I'd taken my jacket off, put it on the chair to air, and also my fleece, then had to freshen up with wet wipes and ready now to get the day on the go. So for cleanliness and a little bit of hygiene, I opened out the little bag that the seeded bread wrap was stored in the food box, and then as you can see I've got it as a protective surface, the inner surface, to lay out the bread wrap, and then buttered it, and then what I'll do is I'll just fold that over and then keep it aside ready. So I've kept that clean and preparing it for the breakfast. Just a little improvised idea there. Okay, so I'm going to Frontier Pro some more river water out of the bottle into my water to go bottle, which, as you know, I can drink out of. But I just wanted to reiterate that that water will be filtered and obviously put into that bottle, which of course I can drink out of through the straw that levers up from the lid. But you could say, well, why not just fill that straight up with river water? Well, I could do, but what I want to do, just for convenience, I can have this for two purposes: to drink out of, or partially filtered from that filter, and that water's in there, and then I can put it in the kettle, which is far better. So there's no confusion about it. So it's far better than actually just filtering, as I said earlier on in the video, the river water through just a fibrous membrane that won't really treat it at all, like the Frontier Pro does. Which meant from when I left my home on the Friday afternoon, did the night paddle, then I was here yesterday, Saturday, then Saturday night, and I'm here Sunday. So nearly 3 days. All I brought with me was actually 2 litres of water. So for this weekend, I was just filtering the water, just as a different example, and then playing around with these two over the weekend, just as a different variation of sourcing water, considering I'm surrounded by it by the riverbank. So this bottle is very firm and it's not squeezable. So the practicalities of maybe thinking, well then surely just fill that up and then drink out of it, or pour through the straw into a kettle, it's not going to work. But I think next time when I use this filtration system, I'll bring just another simple 1 litre drink bottle, just a normal bottle, and then I'll actually fill it up with this water. So it's been partially processed. It's mainly just to sort of make the flavour much better and get rid of some of the aftertaste. And then also then from this one then pour into the water to go. So I've got 2 sources, 2 bottles, one to drink straight out of, and then one which will be a normal drinks bottle that's been filtered with this to then use for cooking and making a brew. So I've obviously used the upright trees of the surrounding area where my basher is to actually make the fixings, but I always bring with me a couple of basher poles, extendable. These go up to about 1.3 metres. Always have a bit of duct tape around there, just always for backup. Any sort of item I've got, even down to my sheath of my Mora knife, just here, that's attached. Got some paracord, got some Ranger band, and I've also got some, again, some duct tape. So there's always accessible things to make fixings on items that you're carrying around with other bits of kit. But back to the tent poles, you've seen in previous setups, some other videos of how I've set up my tarp, etc. I've used these poles before. So if I did actually get to an area that I was planning to pitch up on, which has got sort of trees and uprights I'm going to use for fixings, and for some reason I couldn't get onto that pitch, if someone else was there, a boat's moored up, blocking my entrance to mooring up the canoe and what have you, and landing on where I want to pitch my tarp, I could end up being somewhere where I wasn't planning to be, that might not have the relevant uprights, so at least I've got the basher poles and the sectional poles to actually make a shelter. What I was going to do for last night's setup, I was thinking of just making it a change and different and having a box shape here and then across here with these 2 bits. So this would have been a vertical line, this then would have been a horizontal line. So if you imagine it would have been sort of like that shape, and I would have slept under it. Then I'd have had the other half of the tarp from having the box shape for me to sleep under, so it was nice and concealed. Then the other half of the tarp would have been the ridge line, and I would have had it actually coming up at an angle. And then from the centre line, as it came up as an angle, I'd have had the 2 corners going down one way, then the other. So I'd have had sort of like what I call a gable end, sort of like a triangular area to sit under, which would be my sort of admin and working space. But odds on, I'm going to do that in the near future when I do an actual woodland camp and trek into the woods, and when the weather gets a little bit more adverse, a little bit more inclement when the autumn and winter starts to come, whereby the shelter is going to be more practical, to be a bit more encased within it. But as it was another chill weekend, I thought I'd just leave the tarp as it was. So plenty of leisure space underneath to get backwards and forwards. Okay, so I've worked the worst of the soot residue off. Anything that would actually come off when the kit's going to be put back in that bag, like the saucepan and the kettle in that bag. Obviously it will get a little bit marked, but it's not like not wiping it off in the first place. And I'll put the billy can in a plastic bag before I put it in the kit bag. So that's the worst of it taken off, with a little bit of a scouring pad made out of grass. Or sometimes you can use moss, depending what the sort of growth is around you, that you can use as a cleaning device. So I'm ready for the off, and as always, LNT, leave no trace. Respect the areas and the outdoors that you use. So that's the end of another, well, this time it was a 2-night weekend wild camp. So I paddled in the dark, and now I'm going to leave. I was going to stay a little bit longer, but I want to paddle into the sunlight, which is going to be setting into the west, and that's going to be my navigation back. So I'm going to be paddling back nice and gently, a relaxed pace in the sun, and just enjoying what I can see on the way back. So as always, it was sharing the experience with you as a video diary, just aspects, some new things, different food. Of course, when we're outdoors, well, anything, whatever you do, you've got to eat and you've got to drink. So of course that's a major aspect of any daily living. So of course it becomes a little bit more interesting when you're outdoors, hence the variety of what I cook and the methods that I use. And of course incorporating some of the water filtering system that I use this weekend as well. There's many different varieties, there's many different types, as I said earlier on. So I always hope that, you know, you deem some sort of interest, get ideas, or just get motivated to get outdoors, even if it's just for a day trip, or even to venture overnight, practice your skills, or even learn new ones if you're actually getting into the outdoors for the first time. So I'm ready for the off. So as always, thanks for watching, really appreciate your interest, and catch you in another video soon. Cheers. Take care.